will come to order. Mr. Schaffler, please call the roll.
Senators Amabile, Baisley, Ball, Benavidez, Bridges,
Excuse.
Wright, Carson, Catlin, Cutter,
Excuse.
Danielson, Doherty,
Here.
Exum, Frizzell, Gonzalez,
Excuse.
Hendrickson, Judah,
Excuse.
Kip, Kirkmeyer,
Excuse.
Colker, Lindstedt, Liston, Marchman, Mullica, Pelton B, Pelton R, Rich, Roberts,
Excuse.
Rodriguez, Simpson, Snyder, Sullivan, Wallace,
Excuse.
Weissman,
Excuse.
Zamora Wilson, Bridges, Mr. President.
Let's do this. The morning roll call is 28 present, 0 absent, 7 excused. We have a quorum. Senator Pelton R., would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Mr. President. Would everybody rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Schaffler, please add Senator Weissman to the roll. Please add Senator Wallace to the roll. Approval of the journal, Senator Pelton B.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate Journal of March 10th, 2026 be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. Senate Services.
Correctly printed Senate Bill 136, correctly engrossed Senate Bill 47, 77, 92, and 109, Senate Joint Memorial 2, Senate Joint Resolution 15, correctly revised House Bill 1040, correctly re-revised House Bill 1013, 1025, 1041, 1067, and 1182, correctly enrolled Senate Bill 7.
Mr. Schaffler, please add Senator Gonzalez to the roll. Committee reports.
Mr. President, the Committee on Finance has had under consideration a header hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Member of the State Board of Equalization for terms expiring September 2nd, 2029, Ty Coleman of Alamosa, Colorado, to serve as a member with knowledge of property taxation, appointed. Mr. President, the Committee on Finance has had under consideration a header hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Member of the Financial Services Board, effective July 2nd, 2025, for terms expiring July 1st, 2029, Robert Chavez of Antonito, Colorado, to serve as an executive officer of State Credit Union, appointed. Committee on Finance, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 118 be amended as follows, and is so amended to be referred to the committee of the whole with favorable recommendation and with a recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar. House Bill 1003 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. House Bill 1146 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation and with the recommendation that it be placed in the consent calendar. Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 88 be amended as follows, and if so amended, be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation and with the recommendation that it be placed in the consent calendar. House Bill 1038 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation.
Mr. Schaffler, please add Senator Roberts to the roll. Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege for anyone but the President.
The motion is to proceed out of order for moments of personal privilege for anyone but the President. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. The Majority Leader will be fined $1 for impugning the motives of the Senate President. Am I? Senator, Madam Assistant Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have a moment of personal privilege, please?
Granted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I would like to take a moment to recognize a group of dedicated medical professionals joining us in the chamber today. We're honored to welcome a group of anesthesia residents who are currently training here in Colorado and represent the next generation of physician anesthesiologists. Please stand. They're over here in the corner. These residents are physicians who have completed medical school and are now undergoing several additional years of highly specialized training in anesthesiology. It is way too early in the morning to say that word. Where they learn to provide anesthesia care, manage pain, and respond to some of the most critical moments in patient care. In operating rooms, labor and delivery units, trauma centers, and intensive care units across our state, anesthesiologists play a vital role in keeping patients safe before, during, and after surgery. Their training is rigorous, their work is demanding, and their commitment to patient safety and high-quality care is extraordinary. We are grateful that many of these residents have chosen to train and hopefully continue practicing right here in Colorado, helping to strengthen our healthcare workforce and care for communities all across our state. Please join me in welcoming these anesthesia residents to the Senate today and thank them for their dedication to the people of Colorado.
Welcome to the Senate. We'll take a Senatorial 5. Third reading of bills. Consent calendar, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over Senate Bill 77 from the final passage consent calendar until Thursday, March the 12th.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 77 from the third reading of the bill's final passage consent calendar to Thursday, March the 12th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes, wow. The ayes have it. And Senate Bill 77 will be laid over until tomorrow, Thursday, March 12th. Mr. Schaffler, please add Senator Kirkmeyer and Senator Cutter to the roll. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the passage of the bill on third reading of bill's final passage consent calendar, which is Senate Bill 92.
Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of the bill on the third reading of the bill's consent calendar. Oh, Mr. Schaffler, please read the third reading of the bill's final passage consent calendar.
Senate Bill 92 by Senator Simpson, Representative Sukla, and Velasco concerning the modification of the salary categorization of locally elected officers in specified counties.
Very good. Now, are there any no votes? Seeing none, with a vote of Senator 205 has been requested. Where's your script? Where's your script? We're going to do this again. Third reading of the bill's consent calendar, Mr. Schaffler, please add Senator Judah to the roll. Now, Mr. Schaffler, please read the title of the bill on the consent calendar.
Senate Bill 92 by Senator Simpson, Representative Sukla, and Velasco concerning the modification of the salary categorization of locally elected officers in specified counties.
Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry for the delay. I once again move for the passage of the bill on third reading of bill's final passage consent calendar, which is Senate Bill 92.
Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of the bill on third reading of the bill's consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 92 is passed. Co-sponsors.
Hold on. Judah's here.
Ooh, Mr. Schaffler. Now, with a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 92 is passed. Co-sponsors. Look at that. Senator Gonzalez, Kirkmeyer, Snyder, Mr. Majority Leader, Cutter, Wallace, Bright. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? Please add the president. Third reading of the bills. Final passage. Mr. Schaffler, please read the title of House Bill 1040.
House Bill 1040 by Representative Froelich and Senator Cutter concerning a sterilization of rights of a person with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Senator Cutter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 261040 on third reading and final passage.
The motion is the passage of House Bill 1040. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, or excused, House Bill 1040 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Wallace, Kip, Benavidez, Judah, Gonzalez, Danielson, Marchman, Amabile, Snyder, Weissman, Sullivan, Lindstedt, Ball, Colker, Exum, Mullica, Roberts. Please add the president. Mr. Schaffler, please read the title of Senate Bill 47.
Senate Bill 47 by Senators Danielson and Marchman and Representatives Camacho and Phillips concerning changes to the definition of a general election for the purpose of submitting a question to the voters to allow firefighters to collectively bargain with their public employers.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 47 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 47. Are there any no votes? What? Mr. Minority Leader Frizzell. Kirkmeyer? Zamora Wilson? Rich. Pelton B. Bright. Carson. Catlin. Pelton R. Liston. Baisley. With a vote of 23 ayes, 12 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 47 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Wallace, Kipp, Cutter, Judah, Gonzalez, Amabile, Roberts, Mullica, Exum, Lindstedt, Colker, Sullivan, Ball, Snyder, Weissman, Doherty. Please add the president. Mr. Schaffler, please read the title of Senate Bill 109.
Senate Bill 109 by Senators Exum and Cutter and Representatives Joseph and Ricks concerning building code standards for accessible housing supported by public money.
Senator Cutter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 26-109 on third reading and final passage.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 109. Are there any no votes? Senators Kirkmeyer, Zamora Wilson, Rich, Frizzell, Baisley, Liston, Pelton R., Catlin, Carson, Bright, Pelton B. With a vote of 24 ayes, 11 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 109 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Kipp, Gonzalez, Judah, Wallace, Amabile, Weissman. Please add the president. General orders, second reading of bills. Senator Ball.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the committee of the whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The aye has it, and the motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself in committee of the whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills. Senator Ball will take the chair. Get you some.
Okay.
The committee will come to order and the court rule is relaxed. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 40 until Thursday, March the 12th.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 40 until Thursday, March the 12th. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 040 will lay over until Thursday, March the 12th. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 26-1001?
House Bill 1001 by Representatives Basnicker and Mabry and Senators Exum and Gonzalez concerning the promotion of residential developments on qualifying properties.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We move House Bill 26-1001 along with the Local Government and Housing Committee report.
To the bill. To the committee report. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill has gone through a tremendous amount of stakeholder work and engagement. And in the local government committee, we ran 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different amendments in response to stakeholder feedback and concerns. I'm really proud of the work that we were able to achieve here through the committee process, and I'd also like to just extend my gratitude to the good senator from Broomfield for his amendments as well. And with that, I move the committee report and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the report is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 37?
Amendment L37.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L37 to House Bill 1001.
Is there any discussion? Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a technical amendment to further clarify the definition of a qualifying property. This amendment consolidates the introduced definitions of a qualifying private property, and we want to underscore and ensure that we are being clear about that in this amendment, and qualifying public property that describes the organizations who own land into a single new definition of qualifying entities. So in order to be clear about what it is that we are discussing, this new definition of qualifying properties more clearly describes the limitations in the bill that the property must be under 5 acres, must be owned by a qualifying entity, must not be adjacent to another qualifying property, and must be within a municipality or within a census-designated place within the 3-mile planning area of an incorporated county. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L037? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L037. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. To the bill, Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There is another amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 38?
Amendment L38, amend the local government and
Senator
housing
Mullica.
committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L38 to House Bill 1001.
Is there any discussion of the amendment? Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to take this opportunity to thank the sponsors for putting in the work on this bill. This amendment actually comes from my community with some of the asks that they had. And what it does is allow city councils and county commissions to accept dedications on subdivision plats as well as apply standard subdivision regulations. It's something that that my community was asking for to be able to allow. It's an amendment that the sponsors worked on and really appreciate and would ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 38? Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you.
Do you want me to say it again?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, just once again, this amendment allows city councils and county commissioners to accept dedication on subdivision plats as well as apply standard subdivision regulations. Again, this is some language that that my county had come with and asked for to help get to a better spot on this piece of legislation.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 38? Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. God. All right, I'll get organized here. Members, I would urge an aye vote on this. It makes perfect sense. I actually have an amendment that's fairly similar, not quite written this way, but applying and enforcing subdivision regulations and also applying and enforcing the subdivision plats. Plats are a legal document, and they are associated with what is required on the property and what can be required on the property. If you're wishing to make changes to that, There are things that have to take place, and it can't be done through an administrative process. So again, I would urge an aye vote on this amendment. I think it's extremely important to make sure that we are not getting into a taking situation or impacting people's vested rights.
Is there any further discussion of Amendment 38? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Amendment 38. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 39?
Amendment L39, amend the local
Gonzalez.
government.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L39 and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion on Amendment L39? Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. L39 is also another amendment in response to these ongoing and iterative stakeholder discussions that we have had. We heard clearly about wanting to ensure that nonprofit, that local governments would be able to verify whether these nonprofit entities qualify under the bill. And so this amendment directs DOLA to publish verification guidance to support local governments in verifying the status of a nonprofit organization with a demonstrated history of providing affordable housing. As you will see from the pre-amended version of the bill, we want to be very, very clear about the types of nonprofit organizations that we are speaking about, and in response to those questions from local governments, we'll publish this guidance in order to assist those local governments to make that determination. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of Amendment L039? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L039. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 40?
Amendment L40,
Senator
amend the
Gonzalez.
local.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L40 to 1001.
Is there any discussion of L40? Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. L40 is largely a technical clarification to correct the bill's language that had referred to residential use to instead referring to a residential development. We wanted to ensure that we were being as clear as possible in communicating this, and this is based off of feedback from local governments that we had, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of Amendment L40? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L40. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. To the bill. Senator Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everybody. This has been a interesting process and a learning process, and I want to first of all thank my co-prime Senadora from Denver for this work, and also want to thank all the local governments that we've engaged with over the last few months to get this bill in a good place. But just want to go over a few things about what the bill will do, and this is a reiteration of what we did last year on the bill that we didn't have the opportunity to get that done, and that was House Bill 251169. But the bill before you today, the HOME Act, this new bill allows certain nonprofits, school districts, and universities, housing authority, and transit agencies to all use up to 5 acres of their unused or unutilized lands for developing affordable housing. The bill established a consistent and standard process for qualifying entities to build those affordable housing units. These processes are at least 28% faster than our regular approvals, which saves money and time. We don't make sure that developers that are interested in doing this and people that own property are interested in doing this have a process to go through. And working in partnership with local government, local control advocates, this bill allows local governments to continue to implement existing affordable housing measures which apply to similar residential developments, including inclusionary zoning, deed restrictions, and community benefit agreements. The bill before you today, House Bill 261001, the HOME Act, will help build housing which Coloradans can afford by removing barriers for public schools, universities, nonprofits with a history of building affordable housing, public housing authority, and transit agencies which are willing to build housing on their unutilized land. And I want to reiterate, this is not a mandate. And let me end by repeating what I said when I presented the Yigbee bill to this group last year. There's a housing crisis in Colorado and throughout our country. And this is a good bill that opens up more ways for us to begin building affordable housing units. And I would ask for an aye vote on House Bill 10001.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to begin by extending my appreciation to the good senator from Colorado Springs for his diligence, his expertise, and his leadership in advancing this important policy. Colorado, we are in the midst of a housing crisis, y'all, and Coloradans are overwhelmingly burdened with the cost of housing. The number of Colorado households spending more than 30% of their total income in either rent or in mortgage payments increased from nearly 700,000 back in 2014 to nearly 900,000 in 2024. That is 35% of all households in the state. And this increase in housing costs is due to a combination of both population growth and not enough housing being built. A research brief published by the demographer found that Colorado needed 106,000 housing units as of 2023 to overcome the housing shortfall, and 34,100 units would need to be built annually in order to maintain the housing shortage where it's currently at. That math don't work, y'all. So what are we going to do? Enter House Bill 1001. We do have an opportunity for vacant or underutilized land to be instead transformed into housing when it is being accomplished in partnership with the organizations that have a history of building affordable housing. I'm talking Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. I'm talking Habitat for Humanity. I am talking the organizations in your community across the state who have demonstrated expertise in making this work. I ask for an aye vote in order for Colorado to finally tackle the affordable housing crisis with the urgency that it requires. Thank you so much.
Senator Baisley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this, folks, members, boils down to, and my constituents, this boils down to the government trying to provide a solution, a government-invented solution to a government-created problem. I'll read from the bill. When local governments restrict housing developments within their jurisdiction, they impact neighboring local governments, as if it's a bad thing to have local governments to create zoning rules that maintain the sense of place that's created for every neighborhood. It's what the local government control is all about. It's why people move into a neighborhood, one that they want to be as it appeared when they first arrived. And to maintain that sense of place for that area, for that zone, is what local government control is all about. So this is an attempt to override all of that local control with a state imposition. This declaration in this bill says that the General Assembly finds and declares that community opposition and restrictive local land use policies limit the housing supply, impact housing options for Coloradans of low and moderate incomes, and restrict the availability of workforce housing, thereby affecting employment growth. Another attack on the local authority, especially for the zoning. There's a quote in here about a research paper from Boston titled "How to Increase Housing Affordability." found that relaxing the density restrictions, either alone or in combination with relaxing maximum height restrictions, is the most effective policy reform for increasing the housing supply and reducing multifamily rents and single-family home prices. So here again, this is a concept that comes in here from the East Coast saying, hey, here's a way to override local control to impose a zoning law, override local zoning laws in order to accomplish more housing. A contributing factor, and I'm back to near the beginning of the legislative declaration, a contributing factor to the increase in cost-burdened households that population growth has outpaced new housing development. Now, this portion that I'm about to read here was quoted multiple times by the folks giving testimony in favor of this bill. This describes a demand, a need for an additional 106,000 housing units needed to overcome the housing shortfall. So that number was repeated over and over and over. It's written right in the declaration of the bill. And it caused me to think, why 106,000 new units are needed? Now, there is a natural growth in population based on whatever our repopulation growth is. And so there is a natural growth for a society, for a community in population, and therefore the market keeps up with that housing demand, unless, of course, there's some sudden injection of new population, folks, which is what was pointed out by one person who did give testimony, the only one who had the nerve to say it, and I'm going to repeat what he said, about that there is a sudden influx of immigration into the state, which of course is fine unless that's not done legally. But a simple Googling of that number for Colorado says that there are 200,000 illegal aliens living in the state of Colorado right now. 200,000 have come in. So that would explain a shortage of 106,000 homes that we have a shortage for to accommodate all that. So here's a government solution for a government-created problem. And this is not the right solution to override local government's authority for their zoning laws in order to accommodate folks that were illegally brought in by the previous administration. This is not the right approach to force state impositions onto local governments to accommodate a previous erroneous move by the federal government. So we need to vote against this bill. This is not the right solution, and it's not where we ought to be headed as a state.
Senator Bright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I applaud the bill sponsors for bringing forward a bill to address something that's going on in Colorado, and that is cost of housing. This is one way to do it. There's probably some other ways to tackle this problem as well. I would attribute the high cost of housing in Colorado to a basic supply and demand phenomena. There's a demand to live in this awesome state that we live in Colorado, and there's just not enough housing to go around. And I would also offer that we should just wait a minute and look at the data, because I think Coloradoans are on their way out of Colorado rather than on their way in. I feel like Coloradoans have felt that they're being over-governed to the point where it just becomes a state that we can't live in anymore. We can't afford to live in anymore. As I was looking at the bill supporters on the Secretary of State website this morning, I can't remember seeing this long of a list of folks that oppose this bill. Also noting that the amendment list is up to 40 now. So there's been 40 different attempts at modifying this bill to get it into a good place. And I appreciate the work that the sponsors are entertaining to try to get this bill to a good spot. I feel like there is some amendments in this process that we can introduce to get this to have less folks opposing this bill and more folks supporting this bill. And I also want to introduce an amendment to the same effect.
There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L35?
Amendment L35.
Senator Bright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L35 to House Bill 1001.
Is there any discussion? Senator Bright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm introducing this amendment today, L35, that I believe is one of the more straightforward things we could consider today. This requires that at least one public hearing be held within the relevant jurisdiction before a housing development is approved under this bill. I want to be direct about what this amendment is not. It's not an attempt to kill the Home Act. It's not an effort to recreate the very discretionary processes that this bill was designed to replace. It does not give the opponents of housing a veto. It does not impose new substantive standards on developers. It does not change a single word of the eligibility requirements, the height provisions, or the density protections. All it does is guarantee that before a major development changes a neighborhood, the people who live in that neighborhood know about it and have one opportunity to be heard. This is not obstruction, this is basic democracy. The bill, as written, requires all qualifying developments to move through an administrative approval process. That process is decided entirely by local government staff based solely on compliance with objective standards. There's no notice requirement to adjacent property owners. There's no community meeting. There's no public record of who knew what and when. A 40-unit apartment building can be approved on a school district lot in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and the neighbors may not find out until the permits are posted on the fence. I've heard the research the sponsors cite, and I accept that research. The legislative declaration notes that more than 85% of public commenters in discretionary rezoning processes raise oppositional concerns. I understand why the sponsors looked at that number and concluded that the public participation is the problem. But I would ask them to consider a different interpretation. Maybe 85% opposition is what happens when communities feel that development is being done to them rather than with them. A single mandatory public hearing creates awareness. It creates accountability. It creates the kind of trust that makes the project easier, not harder. This bill applies to every jurisdiction in Colorado with a population over 2,000. That means it will reshape communities from Steamboat Springs to Pueblo to the suburbs of Denver. Those communities did not have a meaningful role in drafting this. This amendment does not give them back everything they lost in that process, but it gives them a chair at the table and a voice. Transparency is not the enemy of housing. Exclusion is. Let's build homes and trust. I urge my colleagues to support Amendment L35.
Senator Frizzell.
Thank you. Members, I rise in support of Amendment L35. Some of us here in this chamber have been elected officials in their previous lives, and some will be elected officials in a different capacity in our next chapter. I am the former. I was elected to county government. And I have a healthy respect for what county commissioners, planning commissions who represent the county commissioners, town councils, city councils, city planners go through when a development is suggested. And sometimes it's an infill in an existing subdivision that's different than the cookie cutter houses that have been built all around. But it's the thing that I worry about with this bill, and I'm going to be speaking on it a lot more later, but I did want to get up and speak to this amendment that my good colleague from Greeley brought forward, from Platteville, sorry. Elected officials are trusted, hopefully, by the people that they serve. And that's important, because if an elected official loses the trust of their constituents, things go south very quickly. People need to be able to understand and expect that they have a voice. The reality with most development is that master plans exist. Land use is typically permitted, and also part of our society is the fact that if you own a property and you're going to develop it in a legally permissive way, meaning according to what the master plan outlines, there's very little that the public can do about that. But it's very, very important that they have a voice, that they have the ability to stand up for their 2 or 3 minutes and tell the governing board how this is going to adversely or perhaps positively impact them. Because when we take away the voice of the people, which is essentially what this bill contemplates, we lose the trust of the people that we serve. So that transparency is important. It's important, that's why master plans at a county level and a city level and a town level go through stakeholding and meeting after meeting after meeting. So it's a very public and transparent process, so folks know what to expect of that vacant lot that's, you know, a few doors down from their house. So this is a very pertinent amendment. This is an important amendment, perhaps one of the most important amendments that we will see here today on House Bill 1001. This amendment gives citizens a voice in what happens in their community. And I urge an aye vote on this.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L035? Senator Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the good senator from Platteville for bringing the amendment. And we agree with you. And if you look at the pre-amended bill, the bottom of page 15 and around the bottom of page 16, it talks about applying and enforcing. It says nothing in this section prevents the jurisdiction from applying or enforcing infrastructure standards in local law during the administrative approval process, including standards related to utilities, transportation, public works, and codes. And then at the bottom of page 16 of the pre-amended bill, it talks about enacting and applying local law that requires notifying the public regarding a development application or soliciting and collecting feedback from residents in subject jurisdiction. So with that, we've already added an amendment to that, and so I ask for a no vote on Amendment L35.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for an aye vote on this amendment. And it does say in the pre-amended version about
applying and enforcing locally adopted, all these processes and going through. And I'm sorry, can I see your pre-amended bill? Will you hold that out? And where did you talk about the people get to talk?
Bottom of 15.
Yeah.
And the bottom of 16.
Bottom of 16. Okay, thank you. And thank you to the good senator from El Paso County. Appreciate the help. And it does say in the pre-amended version, and there was an amendment that says that essentially nothing in this section prevents a subject jurisdiction, so that would be the local government, from enacting or implying a local law that requires notifying the public regarding a development application. Okay, that already has to happen. So I'm glad they reaffirmed it in law that said there's nothing from enacting or applying a local law that requires notifying the public regarding a development application or soliciting and collecting feedback from residents of the subject jurisdiction. The individuals who will be receiving feedback from the residents of the subject jurisdiction are staff. They're in the planning department. They'll be getting the feedback. It won't be going to the elected officials, who I, as a citizen, have the opportunity to hold my county commissioners accountable because they're elected. That's the purpose of a public hearing. So this is not a public hearing. This is same as. Right now, if a land use application or a proposal for development, whether it's administrative review or is required to have a public hearing, right now, the public is already notified. They're already told about it. In my county, people are noticed. They're required, the person who's the developer or the person who's making the changes to their property and going through a land use process has to notice their neighbors. And the neighbors have the opportunity to already comment. But what this bill does is it doesn't give them the opportunity to a public hearing with their elected officials, who in a lot of these cases, when you are changing things, and we're not talking necessarily about vacant land, and I'm going to get into this more as we go into this conversation discussion. We're not talking just about vacant lands. We're talking about lands that have already gone through a process, might have been a change of zone, might have just been a replatting, might have been a use by special review permit. But they've gone through a process that has had public hearing, that people were duly notified, had the opportunity who were impacted to make comments, but we're not talking about vacant land. We're talking about property that's gone through all these processes. And now they're going to make a change. The people who are the most impacted should have the right to a public hearing. If there's going to be a change that will impact their property and impact their living conditions, their place of residence, the value of their property, they should have the opportunity to comment in a public hearing. Not just comment to the staff when they already have that opportunity. This is nothing new. This is basically we almost like reiterate what's in law already, what's already in guidelines and policies and requirements as far as public notification in our state. So asking to have that there is a required public hearing is not outrageous. I mean, I just heard comments earlier about, democracy. You don't want to let people go to a vote? What? You don't want to let people talk? You don't want to let them impact, the ones that are impacted, let them voice their concerns? Why is that? Why is that? Because we're afraid in a not so objective way
because it is subjective, that these individuals who feel like they're going to be impacted, know they're going to be impacted, all of a sudden, a lot that they thought was supposed to be a school or a park or just open space could now have a multifamily dwelling unit on it. 5 acres is a lot of land. You can build a lot of dwelling units on that land in a multifamily dwelling unit. And I'm not saying that's bad. What we're saying here is we should quit trying to preempt local government and at the same time silence the voice of those that are the most impacted. That's what a public hearing does. It allows people to talk to those that they elect and hold them accountable and voice their concerns. Same as when we're all getting emails and text messages, or when they come to a public hearing here. They get a whopping 3 minutes, sometimes only 2. It's the same in a public hearing in some cases. In my county, we would let people talk for longer than 3 minutes, especially if they drove quite a few hours to get there or had to take off from work to get there. We let them have their voice. This is how you instill trust in government. They should get to hold their elected officials accountable. They should get to have their say with their elected officials. I mean, I guess they can go in and talk to the staff, but that's not the same. So everybody likes to talk about democracy, protecting our votes, giving the people the voice. Why not in this case? Why not in this case? I ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L35? Senator Lindstedt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify, in committee, we put an amendment on this bill that does not change local public comment processes. Those decisions can still be made by local governments. I think most local governments have an administrative approval process with a public comment process included. So the bill, to clarify, does nothing to take away the voice of constituents when they're interfacing with their local government in an administrative approval, and we put an amendment on to make that affirmative.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you. Let me just read you another section of this bill. A subject on or after December 31st, 2027, subject to an administrative approval process. Administrative approval process is not going in front of the elected officials. It is not having a public hearing. A public hearing is what we're talking about here. And if you don't have a public hearing, you are effectively silencing the voice of citizens, of those that are most impacted. When you say that it shall allow a residential development to be constructed, so goes through an administrative process, a process that normally would have had a public hearing. I think somewhere in the ledge deck or somewhere where I was reading stuff at 2 o'clock in the morning, it talked about the reason for an administrative process, for an administrative shall approve. And it was because when you allow the neighborhood who is the most impacted, and you have things and you have conditions and requirements within your public hearing process that says you have to hear from the public and you have to consider what they say and you have to talk about the compatibility of that process, the compatibility of the land use that is being proposed, of the new development that is being proposed, of the multifamily dwelling unit that is being proposed in a single family unit subdivision, that you have to listen to and you have to take into determination as an elected official that compatibility issue. You have to listen to your constituents. So when you put into law that process that normally went through a public hearing process, not just in front of the Board of County Commissioners or the Board of County Commissioners, but also a public hearing process that went in front of a planning commission, people of their peers, yes, it can be subjective. So when you keep listing very specifically in this bill that it has to be objective standards, you are effectively removing the voice of the people that are most impacted and not allowing for a determination by elected officials in a public hearing that allows for the voice of the people who are the most impacted to have their voice and say why they are impacted. So the bill reads that subject to an administrative approval process, no public hearing there. No public hearing in an administrative approval process. And even if there was, it would be with staff, not the elected officials. What is being eliminated here for purpose of expediency, to try and push through a development as quickly as possible, is to eliminate the public from a public hearing process in front of their elected officials. That's what this bill does. And what you should really be looking at also in coordination with this is the rest of the law that isn't in this bill, because they're not changing it. But it is in section 29-35-102, paragraph 2, subparagraph A, Roman numeral 2. Does not require and cannot be elevated to require a public hearing recommendation. Now, let me just take the time to find out where that would actually be in this bill if it was in here. $29.35.103. This is going to take me a minute because literally I was reading this bill at 2 o'clock in the morning and it all started running together. But there is a section in here that talks about administrative process, 29.35.103. I'm going to find it. I know what it needs to do. Yeah. That's all right. Page 3 after line 12. Okay, here we go. Definitions, page 3. These are found in current law, section 29-35-103. And if you read there, 2A, under definitions, administrative approval process means a process, and now keep in mind, it is in statute already. Administrative approval process means, and this is changes, a development application instead of proposal for a specified project is approved with conditions, or denied by local government administrative staff based solely on its compliance with objective standards set forth in local laws. And then before you skip down to 2.5, which is in the bill, you have to read the next section of law, which is Roman numeral 2. So you see Roman numeral 1 is here that they made changes to in this bill. Roman numeral 2, which is in law, says, does not require and cannot be elevated to require a public hearing, a recommendation, or a decision by an elected or appointed body of the hearing officer or a hearing officer. So that elected body would be a Board of County Commissioners, a city council, or a town board. That appointed body is a planning commission. And in this bill, where the definition is, where we talk about a definition for an administrative approval process, says very clearly in law, can have a hearing process, a public hearing process, which silences the voice of the public. which does not allow them to hold accountable the people that they elect to protect them. That's what it says. So I would ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the good senator from Brighton. I just want to remind folks that this is to an amendment that would, this amendment that is being proposed would add to bureaucracy, would add to the process. Now, I just want to read from, you want to get into statute, let's get into Weld County Board of County Commissioners. This is, they already delegate the authority and responsibility for processing, approving, and enforcing site plan reviews to the Department of Planning Services. The Department of Planning Services shall also have the responsibility of ensuring that all application submittal requirements are met prior to initializing any official action. TLDR, friends, the Board of County Commissioners in Weld County already delegates this to staff, as is today. Ask for a no on the amendment.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you. Maybe we should follow through on that. So, the Board of County Commissioners in Weld County, after me, may have done that, but they don't have anything that says they can't elevate any requirement, any proposal, any application for development in front of them to a public hearing. And in all likelihood, the things that they do by administrative process in most counties and most cities and towns are those things that which normally do not require a public hearing, that have already gone through a public hearing process. And we'll probably have more discussion about this as we get going with some of the amendments, other amendments I have for this bill. So yes, there are times, and I will give you one, when a landowner wishes to do a recorded exemption, record off 2 to 5 acres of their own property in the agricultural zone for a farm worker who is working on the farm, or for a family member who is a member who is working on the farm as well. And they wish to give them a parcel of land so that they can build a home on it and still work on the farm and still live close to the farm. Now that's an allowable use in the agricultural zone. It's listed in the guidance and in the subdivision regulations. And so why should they have to go through a public hearing? It's their property, it's on their land, they're dividing it off to keep the farm active and keep the farm going. So yes, it's a single family dwelling, and they've allowed for it to be an administrative process because, one, it's compatible with the surrounding neighbors, it's consistent with the intent of the zone district, it's consistent and compatible with the comprehensive plan. Shall I go on? Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense that you would allow that to be an administrative process, because not only do they already meet all of the objective standards and conditions that might be put on that permit, that recorded exemption, but they also meet the subjective ones. You know, the ones where you talk to your neighbor, the ones where you're compatible and consistent with a comprehensive plan that has gone through a horrendous, long public comment period. So again, asking to have the voices heard of those that are the most impacted, because instead you want to try and put a multifamily dwelling unit in what was a single-family dwelling subdivision. I think makes perfect sense. So while I appreciate the amendment that came up in committee, it doesn't get us where we need to go. So I ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L35? Senator Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Compatibility has been used to discriminate for decades. Compatibility means shutting out people in communities and denying things like multifamily. So we ask for a no vote on Amendment 035.
Any further discussion on Amendment L35? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L35. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it, and the amendment is lost. To the bill, Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you.
There's an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L42?
Amendment L42, amending gross
Senator
bill.
Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L042.
Is there any discussion on Amendment L42? Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment actually cleans this up, and we're still talking about public hearings, folks. And this amendment basically is an amendment to the, on the re-engrossed bill, that law that I was reading forth earlier, the one, you know, where it says that does not require, so this is where this would fit in. Right now in Section 2 of this bill, under 29-35103, definitions. Definition for an administrative approval process. Yep, it was amended in this bill. And it talks about a development application for a specified project, if approved with conditions, denied by local government, administrative staff, based solely on compliance with objective standards set forth in local laws. And then, that's Roman numeral 1. Then you have to read Roman numeral 2, which says, does not require, so an administrative approval process. This is what this bill impacts, and this is what it means. An administrative approval process does not require and cannot be elevated to require a public hearing, a recommendation, or a decision by an elected or appointed body or a hearing officer. Amendment L042 strikes the words and cannot be elevated to require. That's the first portion of this amendment. So, saying again that there's an opportunity for a public hearing process if this amendment is passed. The second portion of this amendment amends the Local Government Housing Committee report, and after the word public, so here's what it reads right now. Here's what it was amended. Enacting or applying a local law that requires notifying the public. I think we heard this. This is on the bottom of page 16 of the pre-amended bill. So thank you again for at least giving it a good shot. Enacting or applying a local law that requires notifying the public regarding a development application. And what this amendment would say is, enacting or applying a local law that requires notifying the public of the public hearing if applicable. If a public hearing were to get elevated, if the application were to get elevated, then this part would say yes, and you have to notify the public of a public hearing if applicable, regarding a development application or soliciting and collecting feedback from residents of the subject jurisdiction. You would have to notify the public. You know, what I heard was, and I'm sure it was meant with well intention, that when you make determinations of compatibility, that we're shutting out these developments, that we're shutting out multifamily dwelling units. That's not accurate, but it's also a sad statement to make, that we should shut out the voice of the people who are most impacted, who compatibility does extremely matter, so that we can expedite a multi-dwelling family unit on a parcel that was never slotted to be that in the first place. Compatibility is important. But people aren't getting shut out because a dwelling unit, a multifamily dwelling unit, wasn't built because the surrounding neighbors said, hey, that's not compatible with our neighborhood. Because the surrounding property owner might be their first time home. And they went and looked it up. They went and really looked at, where do we want to live? Where can we afford to live? Where do I want to raise my family? So they go and they shop around and they look at what's required. And they should be able to have confidence in the fact that, one, they looked at the municipality and they said, God, we looked at their comprehensive planning and all of their planning that they've done. And we appreciate that they put zoning in place that says, you know, in this area, we're going to have industrial. And over here in this area, we're going to do some commercial, and we might do mixed-use development that has commercial and residential that would be related to the commercial. And then over in this area where we're building our schools, we're going to have single-family subdivisions. And maybe in this area, you know, because in residential development and in residential zoning, there's like R1, R2, R3, R4, R5. Each of those different residential zone districts means something a little bit different. They go from single-family dwellings up to apartments and multifamily dwellings. All sorts of different things. So again, that you have planned growth, that you are working with your people who want to live in your city or your county, and you're telling them, look, we've planned this out. We're not going to put your single-family dwelling home next to a landfill. We're not going to put single-family dwellings next to maybe some things that you would consider an obnoxious use. You know, like an airport. Or, you know, there have been cases in Greeley, Colorado, where people didn't want to live next to a huge liquor store because they thought it would change the character of their neighborhood. So when people go looking for a place to live, they're looking for, what's the character of that neighborhood that I want to live in? And they go look at things. They go look at subdivisions. They go check out the county clerk records, and they're like, oh, this isn't a platted subdivision. And everything there may be going to be smaller homes. They're not the $1 million homes on 5-acre lots. Maybe they're on 1/3 of an acre. But you know what? That's a home I can afford and a home that I want to raise my family in. And a neighborhood that I like. And so it went through a hearing, gets a change of zone, gets platted. These people have all said, hey, this is where I want to live. And then along comes House Bill 1001. This is, through an administrative process, we can change the character of your neighborhood. We can change all of your dreams like that, and you're not going to get anything to say about it. You're not going to get to come in and talk to your elected officials. You're not going to get that opportunity to have that public hearing and tell your elected officials and tell that appointed body, that planning commission, why you feel, or maybe you do feel. I don't know why everybody's so afraid of public hearings. You know, when things are done in the open, more likely to be approved. When people feel like they can trust their government and they have a voice, more likely to be more neighborly and work things through. But when you just kind of try to slide one by through an administrative process and say, yeah, I know you thought that property was supposed to be a park. Oh, wait, it is a park. And it just got bought by a church who's going to work with a nonprofit and now put in multifamily dwellings and change the whole character of your neighborhood. And you're sitting around your kitchen table thinking, I got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. This is not what I thought. This is not where I thought we were going to live. And I can't afford to move. So now I'm going to be impacted. And I don't get a say? I did my research. I know what this is supposed to be. If I wanted to live next to a multifamily dwelling unit, I would have bought property there. I would have bought a home next to it. But I didn't. They're thinking to themselves, I bought a home, trying to fulfill my dream. I've been struggling to get by, and now I don't even get a voice because we're just going to slide it through an administrative process. So what this says is, this amendment says very clearly, let's clean up the law. Let's make sure that people's voices are not silenced, that we do respect democracy, that we do respect individuals who are being impacted, that we are going to say, yes, you have a voice. You can trust us. You can trust us. And it says that an administrative approval process, we strike the part that says, when it says does not require and cannot be elevated to require. We just say does not require a public hearing. Doesn't require one. We would eliminate the words and cannot be elevated to require. It's not an absolute that a public hearing process would be. There may be an administrative process that's going through, and they're hearing a lot. Commissioners, the town boards, they're hearing a lot of discussion, and they're thinking, maybe we should have a public hearing. Maybe we should let the people know that we want to hear from them, that we believe in them, and we want to hear from them, and we want to let their voice be heard. That's what a public hearing process is about. So this would eliminate the part that says you can't elevate to a required public hearing process. Just gives the opportunity. And then it says if there is a public hearing process, that the public gets notified. Because what's good a public hearing if you don't notify the public that there's going to be a public hearing? Think how many times down here we've had to change things around because we didn't give adequate notice to the public. You just can't cut the public out. You can't cut out the neighbors who are the most impacted from having their voice. And when you do that, it instills not trust. It doesn't instill trust in government. They think you're trying to hide something. And it looks like you are. So it's not supposed to be about expediency. This bill isn't going to expedite land use approvals any quicker than what they're being done now. All this bill's doing is ensuring that the public that is the most impacted, the surrounding neighbors, the rest of the people who live in that subdivision or in that area don't have a voice. I would ask for an aye vote on L042.
Senator Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really like this amendment. This amendment is so important to make sure that we keep the voice of the public in this process. I know the good senator from Weld County and I have sat in many, and the good senator from Cheyenne Wells have sat in many land use hearings where we hear from the public on how they want their communities to be developed. This is so important to continue that. And I know that the downstairs doesn't like that because it hurts their ability to do things because they want to cut out the process. I get that. But this process, you should never look at cutting stuff and cutting the public out of the process of the development of your communities. It is so important. I mean, I had the Elks Lodge Hall completely full of concerned citizens when we were doing a wind tower project in Logan County. That was land use. It's the same thing here. Imagine if we would have cut that out and just said, okay, we're going to let the administrative staff just do it. That wouldn't have been okay. This is important. This amendment is important. We must do this. We must allow the government to listen to the people and have that opportunity. The people is the guiding principle of this process. If you want to develop an area in your community, great. But the people should have a say on what's going in next door to them. I have another great example of something that happened. So when I used to live over on the Western Slope, I used to have a lot of friends that lived on top of Missouri Heights there in Elgibel. And when they were developing that area, they came up with this thing called a viewing easement. And a viewing easement is saying that you cannot build your house so high so you obstruct the view of the mountains for your neighbors. It's the same thing. That's what they did because they listened to the public. The public process in land use is very important. And we should not be cutting it out. I ask for a yes vote on L42.
Senator Frizzell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of Amendment L42 to House Bill 1001. Members, this is actually, I think it's an elegant solution to this conversation because it's not requiring, it's not the heavy hand of state government requiring, saying thou shalt have a public hearing. It says it's not requiring one. And when a jurisdiction, a local government, whether it is a city or a county or a town, has that as part of their process, they can observe their process. I think it's an elegant solution. You know, I'm very grateful for the good senator from Brighton's conversation around the decision-making process that people go through when they go to buy a house. Because this is almost always the biggest investment that they have. The biggest. So it's not a decision that most people make lightly. They're looking down the road, expecting to raise their children there. But I personally had the experience in Douglas County where people buy a house thinking that it backs to open space, and all of a sudden you have bulldozers driving in, putting up another high-density housing project after those people have paid a lot premium for open space. Those are problems that we deal with. Those are problems that commissioners and city councils deal with. And believe me, they hear about it. We are so lucky to have former county commissioners in this chamber because they understand how important it is to respect the citizens that they serve. One of the bill sponsors mentioned a couple of minutes ago that this is just creating bureaucracy. If we have public hearings, that's bureaucracy. I call it trust. It's trust. Trust is about the process and making sure that everybody understands the process and everybody goes through the process the same way. Not a few people who have been carved out in statute having an advantage over others. How land is developed must be legally permissible. That's what master plans are all about. That's why they're important. They're a roadmap that are used by cities and counties and towns. They're a roadmap. It says this is what we're going to expect. This is the future. And they're not written in stone, no. They're flexible. A property owner can obtain a variance if they go through the process that is outlined for everybody to follow. You get into trouble when you don't have the same standards for everyone. And that's what this bill is talking about. But that's not what this amendment is talking about. This amendment is talking about public hearings, citizen voices. Citizens are important. They elect us. They're important to commissioners. And commissioners want to be trusted. Town council people want to be trusted. It's very, very important. It is not up to us in this chamber to disrupt the trust between local government and its citizens. I ask for an aye vote on L42.
Senator Bright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of Amendment L42 to House Bill 1001. The premise is really simple. As we look at the bill, I feel like there's a reason that it was assigned to be the first bill number out of the House. It's a landmark piece of legislation. It wasn't designed to be a minimal effect on Coloradoans. It was designed to have a pretty significant impact. And there's a reason when you look up the stakeholder page of the bill that there's such a long list of people who care about where this goes. Long list. Advocates, opponents, amend positions. And I feel like we need to get this right. And I feel like there are a few things that we can do to improve it, to make sure we get it right before it escapes this chamber. L42 addresses a paragraph, just a statement on page 3 of the bill. And the statement on page 3 says, does not require and cannot be elevated to require a public hearing, recommendation, or decision by elected or appointed body or hearing officer. Cannot is a really strong word. Literally prohibits the elevation of the requirement of a public hearing. I mean, what are we trying to hide? I've been a part of city council discussions, changes of use, and those have always been accompanied by publicly vetting the policy, publicly vetting the application for a child care center in a residential neighborhood, publicly vetting the process of installing child care into a commercial facility. The public are always made aware of this process, but yet in the bill, page 3, does not require and cannot be elevated to require a public hearing. Amendment L42 is really simple. We just want to make sure that the cannot, the strong word of cannot, is removed so that we have fully allowed our city councils, our county processes to be fully transparent to the folks who are living here in Colorado and have chosen their place to live very specifically, and so that they can weigh in on these processes. I live outside of Platteville. I have a proposed 40-acre battery plant that's being installed right next to my property. Guess what I got? I got an invitation to publicly engage into where this goes and have a voice in the process of, like, do I want this here? Do I not want it here? Is it going to affect the value of my land? Is it not? Am I going to be worried about my kids, my grandkids? Gives me a chance to weigh in on that. And while I understand the possibility exists for municipalities to call a public meeting, I think this bill is large enough, has a large enough impact, that maybe we ought to ask the municipalities to engage. It's a big effect, and it should be accompanied by a large level of transparency. I don't think that's too much to ask. We need to honor the people who have chosen to live here in Colorado. I fully understand in having fully open neighborhoods. I don't believe in discrimination, but I do believe in an open process. And if there's a type of building or something that wasn't allowed prior that is going to be allowed with this bill, then we should allow the public to weigh in on that and say, you know, I didn't move here for this. I think that's an important piece of transparency that L42 brings to House Bill 1001. And again, I rise in support and would encourage a yes vote on Amendment L42 to House Bill 1001.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L42? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L42. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it, and the amendment is lost. To the bill, Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I hope this amendment is an easier one and can be met with an aye vote. And I'll just get right to it.
There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L43?
Amendment L43, amending Marine Gross Bill, page 14, line
Senator
18.
Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L043.
Is there any discussion? Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, currently with school districts, they do not necessarily, when they are planning a school facility, a building, you know, if they're going to build an elementary school or high school or whatever they're going to build, they don't currently have to, on that school facility, go through the local land use process. So I will give you an example. In Weld County, we had a school district that was building a high school out somewhat in the county. Obviously, it had where they were building it, the road system was not necessarily adequate for a high school. For a bunch of kids that are just learning how to drive, it wasn't necessarily adequate for them to be using a dirt road with a bunch of curves in it that went through a boggish area, you know, by a park, St. Vrain Park and State Park. And we already knew that there were a lot of accidents there because of this one curve that was like, I want to say like a 20-mile-an-hour curve, that if you take it too fast, man, you end up off the road in the ditch and worse. So they don't have to go through those processes. And when this school district was citing their school, as a board, we talked to them and we said, you're impacting the roads, you're impacting, you know, some of the other things, but necessarily the roads. And, you know, we're willing to work with you to make improvements to the roadway, but you need to help pay for some of those as well because you are the ones that are going to be causing the impact. After several discussions back and forth, they told us they weren't going to do anything and that we had to take care of it. And this is an expensive deal. And again, back to not really appropriate planning, you know, looking at it from a different perspective. They got cheap land and put up a school, good for them. But
not working with the local government on dealing with the impacts of their development. So currently, as I said, school districts, they don't have to comply with all locally adopted codes, even the objective ones. They don't have to do building fire, wildfire, resiliency, utility, or stormwater codes. They don't have to comply with any of those. Doesn't matter what you put in law, they're different. They don't have to do that. For a school districts shall comply. And so what this amendment says is that the school district, if they're building something other than a school or something adding on to the school, or maybe they're putting in a field house or a new gym or something of that nature, then they would go through their regular process and they do whatever they do. But if the land that is school district property is now going to become a residential development, that residential development would have to comply with all infrastructure standards in the local law during the administrative approval process, including the standards related to the utilities, the transportation, the public work codes, all of the codes. All of the same codes that a residential unit would have to comply with. So we just want to make sure that the schools would know that with their school district, their school building, things stay the same, but if they are now changing their property to a residential development, that they would still have to go through the administrative approval process on the residential development and get approval and make sure that they are meeting all the objective standards, especially those related to water, sewer, transportation, storm drainage, public works, building, fire, wildfire resiliency, all of it. So that's what this amendment does. I think it's just kind of a clarifying amendment just to make sure. I would hope that's how everyone's interpreting it, but you know how things go with the law. People like to interpret it different ways that benefits them. So with that, I would ask for an aye vote on L043.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for a no vote on L43. The language of 1001 following amendments that we have worked closely alongside a number of local governments, housing advocates, school districts, and others across the state in order to enact. That language was carefully crafted. The bill does not change the current practices that the senator from Brighton is referencing. School districts currently develop on their properties and follow local processes. And with respect, although this is meant to be a technical amendment, it would actually end up undermining that local process that already exists. And so, again, I ask for a no vote. Thank you for the consideration.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Again, just for clarification on L043, I understand that school districts develop on their property, and they develop schools and facilities that are related to schools. They don't develop, at this time, residential dwelling units. Well, if they are still considered school buildings and school property, they don't have to go through the process. They wouldn't have to go through an administrative approval process. Many school districts choose to work with local governments, cities and counties, but they don't have to. And this is just ensuring that should they do a residential development on a property that was originally slated for schools, that they would have to follow the administrative approval process and make sure that they follow the objective codes, just like any other residential developer. That is what L043 is doing, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L43? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L43. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it, and the amendment is lost. To the bill, there is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L044?
Amendment L44, Main Ring Gross Bill, page 9, after line 8, insert C, a parcel that is within a
Senator
platted
Kirkmeyer.
subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L044.
Is there any discussion on Amendment L44? Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I do think this amendment is pretty easy, and I mean, I don't know why we wouldn't approve it, quite frankly. I think it's very clear, and I think it follows vested rights and things that are already currently recorded and how it works. So what this amendment does is it adds to the definition of a parcel that is within a platted subdivision, or I'm sorry, that adds to the definition of an exempt parcel. And it would add a parcel that is within a platted subdivision, that they would be exempt. So here's the importance of this. A parcel that is part of a platted subdivision, like a specific lot, tract, or plot of land created by a recorded map that has been approved by local authorities and is filed in public records. In all likelihood, it probably went through a public hearing process, got their approval, went through, and they record it. So they record this plat, and on this plat, even in regular family, in single-family dwellings, subdivisions, they will have plots of land because there are requirements. There are things that local governments, cities and counties do with school districts in particular that say, for example, you know, we can either pay you a fee to the school district to help build future schools, or we can dedicate land. So there are a lot of subdivisions throughout the state of Colorado where they went through and they dedicated land. They may have dedicated 5 acres, they may have dedicated 10 acres, but they would have platted it. They have put it on the plat and put it in a legal document and recorded it. And they said, we set aside, in this subdivision, we're setting aside these 5 acres, let's just say it's 5 acres, for an elementary school. Because we know our subdivision of, 1,500 homes is going to impact the school district. They're going to need property. They're going to need to build a school. And even in some of the more recent ones, I mean, it used to be they might just give them a fee or just give them some money and say, put that in a fund. It was never enough to build the school. Then they started doing this where they would give them the land. They can do one or the other. And in some of the recent developments that occurred that I'm aware of, developers even go so far as saying, we're going to help you put in the infrastructure and different things in place to have that school there. Because, in a single-family dwelling unit subdivision, having an elementary school present where kids get to walk to school is a big deal, and it's an amenity, and it helps them sell homes. So, again, it's a platted subdivision. It is put into place. It's been recorded. The parcels are defined by a legal description, references the recorded plat, and it's marked on the plat what it's to be used for. Now, there are not only things like that marked on these plats, but a lot of times in subdivisions, going all the way back, very long years, almost every subdivision, they may put a park in that subdivision, or open space, or common areas, all sorts of things that are 5-10 acres of the subdivision. They'll put in these great open space areas, especially in areas that they're trying to do drainage in anyways, so they do like a multi-use with it, but they'll put in extra land. Again, it's an amenity to selling homes in that subdivision. The same thing happens in mixed-use development areas, commercial areas, and even industrial areas, where they'll set aside open space because there might have been requirements that said they had to have so much open land within the development, regardless of what it is. So what this is saying is that those parcels with a platted subdivision would be exempt. They would fall underneath the exemption definition that is within the bill. That's qualifying property.
that starts on page 9 of the amended bill, pre-amended bill. Exempt parcel means, and then there's a whole list, a parcel that is not served by domestic water, that is served by a well, served by a septic tank. Those must have come from counties. That amendment, or some of those comments. A parcel where residential land use is prevented or limited by state regulation. I think maybe that one's close, but this isn't necessarily a deed restriction. This isn't necessarily a state regulation. It is essentially a parcel of land that is platted in a subdivision and has been recorded. It is a legal document. To change the legal document, you have to go through a replatting. You can't just go through an administrative process. And you would be changing a legal document that is duly recorded. The other thing about these legal documents, platted subdivisions that have been recorded in the clerk, is they vest people's rights. They are legal entitlements that are absolute. They're fixed and they are protected by law. So this is not a regulation, as it says in B on page 10 of the pre-amended bill, that a parcel where residential use is prevented or limited by state regulation or even federal regulation, and there wouldn't have been a deed restriction. It would have been in the platting of this property when it went through the land use process to get platted in the first place. So it's being taken away or impaired by subsequent changes in legislation without the owner's consent or due process. Every landowner within that platted subdivision needs to give consent, or there needs to be due process. Due process is not through an administrative process. So I am asking for that we approve L044, which simply adds an additional definition to a parcel that is within, to an exempt parcel for a parcel that is within a platted subdivision. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Frizzell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I stand in great support of Amendment 43 to House Bill 1001. So, members, this just makes sense. Am I on the right? 43, right? 44, sorry. I was looking at 43. I meant 44. I have it here somewhere. I stand in support of Amendment 44 to House Bill 1001. This makes a lot of sense because a subdivision is a legal document. It's a document on which people have purchased their homes. It creates expectations of amenities. And sure, sometimes a school site is included. That happens tons in Douglas County. The school district has lots of parcels, especially with as many subdivisions have been created over the last 40 years in Douglas County. That was part of the requirement, is that, hey, you have to dedicate some land to build a school. Sometimes schools aren't built on those sites, though. And sometimes the sites are, through the HOA, turned into a park or a pool or something else. Open space. But it's a promise. And we've already we've spent a lot of time talking about public comment and the importance of public comment today. And that's really important to this conversation as well, because can you change a subdivision plat? Yeah, sure you can. You can. It happens all the time. You can replat a parcel, but it has to go through the process. So that's why this particular amendment is incredibly important. It's saying that an exempt parcel includes parcels that are within a platted subdivision. That's all it does. Because if you develop a parcel in a platted subdivision in a way different than originally intended, again, going back to, say it's a parcel that was dedicated as part of the subdivision process to the school district, and suddenly that parcel is not going to be a school, it's going to be condominiums. Okay, oh, that's right, we don't do those. It's going to be apartments or townhouses. We don't really do those either, but I like to live in hope. That's a change. And that change is important to the people who live in that subdivision. That change is important legally. And the process must be observed. You can't just go and change the subdivision without going through the process. That's why this Amendment 44 is important. That's why we need to adopt it. Please vote yes on 44.
Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the good senator from Brighton for bringing this. Obviously, with her experience at the county commission level, I look to her a lot and really appreciate the work that she puts in and the perspective she brings, and we tend to agree a lot. I did want to come up and talk about L44 though, because we were able to have a brief offline conversation on the amendment that was passed earlier on L38. And I just really want to be conscious of that. L38 gets my county that I represent to a support position on this bill. And L38 specifically allows the city councils or county commissions to apply standard subdivision regulations when there are these changes, which I think is a good thing. And obviously the senator from Brighton agreed with that and was supportive of that. And I just want to say, I do think that threads the needle. I think that when we look at L44, it's a pure exemption, which I think is you know, for lack of better words, on the extreme, whereas I think with L38, we were able to find a way to thread the needle to give those local governments the ability to still apply you know, standard regulations around these subdivisions. And, you know, and that's what I heard from my counties. Definitely appreciate the senator's perspective, but I think on this issue, in my opinion, we've threaded that needle. And I know I can see there's disagreement that some believe we haven't, but I'm just letting you know that I believe we have, and that we were able to do that with 38, and I would not be supportive of Amendment 44.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, it doesn't. It doesn't help thread the needle. I'm not trying to thread a needle here. I agreed with the amendment that came from the good senator from Thornton, because it said they get to apply and enforce subdivision regulations. Fantastic. I'm talking about a parcel should be exempted after they've applied their subdivision regulations. I mean, that does not fix this issue. So they've applied their subdivision regulations, and the land has been platted, and it's been recorded, and on the plat, there are legal entitlements that are absolute, fixed, and protected by law that cannot be taken away or impaired by subsequent changes in legislation. Subdivision regulations are legislation. I'm talking about a document that is duly recorded and is a legal instrument that says on the plat, it'll have a map. It'll show all the plots that are supposed to be for, I'm just going to use a regular subdivision, that are in that subdivision that are going to be for houses. It'll show where the roads are going to be. It'll show where all the easements are going to be. It will show where the open space is going to be, where the parks are going to be, and where that 5-acre lot, it'll say school on it. And that will be recorded. It is a legal document that is recorded, that for anyone who buys into that subdivision and owns a piece of it has to abide by that plat that has been duly recorded. They have to abide by it. If they wish to make changes to that plat, they have to go through a process that requires replatting, that requires a public hearing, that requires the Board of County Commissioners or the town board or the city council to approve. Everyone who owns property in that subdivision has what is called a vested right. It is a property right, but it is vested, and it is vested because of the legal document, because of the recording. The right is vested. It cannot just be changed by a legislative act. Not one here, and not one in the local government. Subdivision regulations are adopted by ordinance. They are considered regulations. You can't change it. They're considered, it's done through a legislative process. Subdivision regulations are adopted through an ordinance, which is a legislative process. It's a legislative act of the city council. You cannot take away someone's vested right. You cannot impair it by subsequent changes in legislation. So while I appreciate what the good senator from Thornton said, but his amendment talked about applying and enforcing subdivision regulations. That is legislation at the local level. You cannot change or take away vested rights. So that is why I asked for an amendment for an exempt parcel would be a parcel that is within a platted subdivision, a legal document, something that everyone counts on, but at the same time, if they own property in that subdivision, they have a vested right, and they have a right to due process before that is changed. This, most certainly, if this happens, this bill goes through without this change, there will be a lawsuit. And I thought the goal of the bill was to expedite development, not hold it up. There will be lawsuits. There'll probably be a class action type lawsuit, but there will be lawsuits with regard to this. People, I have been in hearings, land use hearings, for 20 years. People who are impacted, whether they perceive it or they are in a negative way, get really angry with their government when they do things to change things through an administrative process, and they don't get to know about it. And they come back later, and they can either do a lawsuit, they might do a lawsuit, which they would win, and then they'll just simply recall their local government elected officials for allowing this to happen, even though it wasn't their fault. So I'm asking this, to me, this is a clarification. This is an important amendment. It's not technical, but it's clear. We shouldn't be passing laws that we know will drive other lawsuits. But at the same time, these are vested rights. It's a legal document. And I'm just asking for in L044 that an exempt parcel would be a parcel that is within a platted subdivision, so that we don't mess everything up and get everybody ticked off and think that they can't trust their government.
Is there further discussion on L044? Senator Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here to speak on Amendment 44. I think one of the things we may be thinking about and not considering is that with all the new subdivisions that are being built around the state of Colorado, particularly in my district, plats are all that people have to make decisions, because there may be no houses in that subdivision yet, so you and your family decide we're thinking about building here. The first thing you want to look at is the plat, so that they can make decisions about what street they might want to be on, what they would like as a neighbor, and you know, whether or not there's going to be a school in it. It's been mentioned a number of times. It helps people make decisions about where they're going to spend their future. And if we decide that we can say, well, it doesn't really matter how you decided because of the information that was required on the plat at the time you bought your lot, we're going to just change that because we've decided that would be better for a different part of the community. I could not do that on a farm plat. I couldn't do that in my community and say, oh, I've changed my mind. It's not going to be a school anymore. It's going to be a zoo, or it's going to be something completely that doesn't fit. That needs to be noticed to the people that made those decisions, and now this is a neighborhood that's grown up. It's got the houses, the yards, the trees, the dogs, and the kids. But all of a sudden, multi-families are being built in that subdivision on ground they thought was going to be a school at some time, with no notice. In an era where we talk about transparency all the time, we talk about being more transparent. Now a bill saying, well, we don't need to be transparent about this because we could make an administrative decision and change every decision that's been made in that neighborhood. Just doesn't seem right. This is a very small change in the bill that's being presented. I think it does a lot of things that we may not think about in the future, but it does give opportunities and awareness to people that have made their life's decisions about what they saw on a legal document that was recorded in their courthouse that drove the development of that subdivision. So a platted lot should, if you're going to change the purpose of it, the use of it, those kind of things, in any other issue, it would go to the public. Yet we've decided this is the #1 priority for the state of Colorado. Is it the #1 priority for the state of Colorado? Because those people are citizens of Colorado too. Let's give them the opportunity to at least see and know and voice their concerns. Just go through the replat. Anyway, please vote yes on 44.
Thank you. Further discussion. Minority Leader Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of L044. It does actually create a higher level of certainty and excluding a parcel that's within a platted subdivision. I can actually speak to a real-world circumstance within my district within the last 4 years where a platted subdivision, a local government entity had purchased some of the parcels within a platted subdivision, and in a well-meaning effort to create more affordable workforce housing, circumvented the process and public engagement and violated that vested property rights in the other owners within the approved subdivision. The owners challenged that to district court. The district court agreed with the homeowners and the existing landowners within the subdivision to say you can't just do this haphazardly. You have to think about going back through the whole public process again if you think you want to try to change the character and the makeup of the subdivision. I think this amendment adds very clear definition that those parcels within a platted subdivision indeed need to be counted as an exempt parcel. Keep us, just add clarity and definition to what we're trying to accomplish within this bill and not set us up for legal challenges going forward, because inevitably, I think that's probably where we end up, which is not a good place to be. I rise in support of L044.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on L044? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L044. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no? No. The noes have it. L044 fails. To the bill. Senator Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we'll just continue on here with the amendment.
There is an amendment at the desk. Mr. Schaffler, can you please read L030?
Amendment L30, amend Ring-Gross Bill, page 14.
Senator Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to try this. This is an amendment that would restore the right of local governments to prohibit housing developments for various factors such as excessive building height, the number of proposed dwelling units, and on-site parking and coverage requirements. This amendment restores local control over community planning decisions. Having worked in local government for 16 years, I believe that local government is best positioned to balance housing growth with traffic patterns, neighborhood character, and community priorities. This amendment ensures that local governments at least retain the authority to protect reasonable land use planning. Because under this bill, local governments are prohibited from rejecting residential developments on qualifying properties based on height, unit density, parking requirements, or other commonly used zoning standards. This effectively strips communities of their ability to shape development in a way that aligns with local needs and infrastructure. It's so important for local officials who know their community better than the Colorado State Legislature to make these decisions. I move L030 to House Bill 1001 and ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on L030? Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I ask for a no vote on this amendment. The lines in L30 that seek to strike lines, basically half of page 15 and half of page 16 would eliminate all the subject jurisdiction language and gut the bill, essentially. I ask for a no vote.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on L030? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L030. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no? No. L030 fails. To the bill. Senator Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, we're going to go a different direction now and talk about something else that I don't find in the bill.
There is an amendment at the desk. Mr. Schaffler, can you please read L036?
Amendment L036, amend Ring-Gross Bill, page 13, after line 3, insert 3, affordability
Senator
requirement.
Rich. Senator Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L036 to House Bill 1001.
That's the proper motion. Please tell us about your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, this amendment would ensure that housing developments that are created under this bill are offered at affordable rental rates. While this bill has been marketed as a housing affordability measure, there is currently no requirement for new developments to be listed at affordable rental rates. Luckily, this amendment would prohibit housing units from exceeding 80% of the median rental rate within a development's respective jurisdiction. Through this reasonable cap, this amendment will ensure that everyday Coloradans rather than profit-driven housing developers, will reap the benefits of affordable housing. I thought it was interesting that this was not even mentioned in this bill, but I think it's a good amendment and one that should be considered, and I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on L036? Senator Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. So confusing.
I'm so sorry.
I'm blonde. So I rise in support of this amendment. This amendment is L036. And I think that this is really important because it's important to understand, and I'm just going to go back to the amendment L037 that was passed earlier by the bill sponsors, that tightened up the definition of what a qualifying entity is and qualifying properties. So let's revisit that quickly. So a qualifying entity means a school district, as defined, I won't read all that. School district, a state college or university, board of cooperative services, housing authority, local or regional transit district, nonprofit organization. And so all of these folks, all these entities have something in common generally, although I think that Board of Cooperative Services may not, but generally speaking, these qualifying entities are tax exempt for property tax purposes. And why is that important, you're asking? I know it's that question is looming in your mind. Why is that important? Well, presumably, these entities can build housing on their already property tax exempt land and offer rental units at a reduced rate simply by virtue of not having to pay property tax. So, does this happen all the time in practice? One would think so, because this happens today, where and we see this all the time, where you have housing authorities who enter into, and you've heard me talk about this, but just in case you missed that particular conversation, housing authorities are property tax exempt entities. And all they have to do is enter into partnership with a for-profit entity for the grand sum of $1, and that whole project becomes exempt from property taxes. So why is that important? Because presumably they are all going to be offering units at a reduced rate because they don't have to pay property tax. It's a great system. The reality is not all of the units are at a reduced rate. Not all of them. So I don't think there's anything wrong, and this is why I support this excellent amendment, because we need to make sure that if you're actually doing what you say you're going to do, you're offering units at a reduced rate for workforce housing. That's what we're doing. And there's nothing wrong with putting those developers' feet to the fire, holding them accountable, making sure that what they're doing is what they say they're doing. Let's be transparent and let's make sure that these folks are accountable.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think we should vote for this one. And I'm a little bit disappointed because I think the good senator from Grand Junction is trying to upstage me with an even better I Love Renters amendment. Remember a couple of years ago on a bill, I think, was it that No on HH bill? One of those bills that was going through. And I asked for an amendment that really looked at how are we helping renters? That if that's what you're supposed to be doing, what are we doing here? So had an amendment, and it effectively died in the Senate by one vote. So a lot of you voted against it. But then it went over to the House. They revised it. They didn't want to call it the Kirkmeyer's I Love Renter Amendment, so they revised it and put it on in the House. So pretty amazing. But here we have the good senator from Grand Junction who's come up with what appears to be a pretty darn good amendment, and I'm going to call it from now on, the good senator from Grand Junction, I Love Renters Amendment, and y'all should vote for it.
Senator Gonzalez.
Republicans supporting rent control, Madam Chair. You love to see it.
Senator Henriksen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in opposition to the proposed rent control amendment. The problem is new developments are more costly than existing developments in many ways, and this amendment exacerbates a chicken or the egg problem that we have. Our lack of housing supply is a huge part of why housing costs are so high. And if we limit the ability to increase supply, then we still have excessive demand, and that drives up the costs on all of the existing properties that we already have. This is what we refer to as the missing middle problem in housing. So while I think that there could be developments that could absolutely be at or below median, now this amendment restricts to below 80% of median housing costs, and it isn't really well defined. Is that per the unit of relative, or per the bedrooms of the relative unit? Is it 80% of what the median is for one bedroom for each one bedroom unit? Is it 80% of the median for two bedrooms, or is it just 80% of what the median rent is? That's not actually defined at all in this amendment, but the broader policy itself is problematic because it attacks, again, the supply problem, which is the root of the problem we're trying to address. And so I will be a no on this amendment.
Is there further discussion on L036? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L036. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say no. The noes have it. L036 fails. To the bill. Senator Carson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll have an amendment here shortly, but I'd like to make a few comments on the bill. So the issues I have with this bill are, relate to, I think a lot of folks in our state today and in our country are frustrated with how government works because they don't really know who makes the decisions that are affecting them, what they're advocating for. I know I get a lot of correspondence on federal issues, and I tell people, well, that's really not something we do in the state government. But what this bill is going to do is really impact on folks' relationship with their local government. And I think it's going to be frustrating to folks when they find out that a lot of the decisions now and a lot of the requirements are going to be driven really at the state level by the state legislature. And we seem to vote on a fair number of bills around here that are marketed as, improving the affordability of housing or providing more affordable housing for folks. And it doesn't seem to be having much of an impact because I think the best way to get more affordable housing is to let the marketplace work. Let government get out of the way. Let the developments that people are interested in developing and purchasing, let that work. And I think that's the best way to cut through all these regulations and rules and mandates and taxes, and let's really get more affordable housing out there. I don't think this bill is the way to do it. I've heard there's been 40 amendments made, quite a few amendments made to the bill, and quite frankly, I think that's a reflection of maybe the bill is not such a great idea in the first place, because if you've got appease all the different interest groups that are worried about being impacted by a piece of legislation like this, maybe we ought to just step aside and let our local governments and the marketplace work. I'm going to offer an amendment here now, and I'll give this to
There is an amendment at the desk. Mr. Shoplew, you please read L034.
Amendment L34, amend Ring-Gross Bill, page 12, line.
Senator Carson.
I move amendment L034.
That's the proper motion. Please tell us about it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what this bill, or excuse me, this amendment does, similar to some of the other amendments that have been offered, is if there's been, mechanisms of government in place already, there's been planning in place, or there's been local government institutions in place overseeing various development, that we ought to just leave that alone. And this amendment in particular would exempt from the bill urban renewal areas or special districts, because they've already got projects and developments and operations underway, and I don't think we need the state to come in with another piece of legislation to impact on that. This protects existing redevelopment and financing agreements that are out there in the local communities, in the counties, in the special districts. Urban Renewal Authority and special districts rely on carefully structured development, plus financing arrangements and land commitments that are regulated and planned years in advance. Forcing new housing mandates in these areas and disrupting existing redevelopment strategies and financial obligations is not a good idea. It's just another state-level government mandate coming in and disrupting what the local folks, local government officials, and the citizens have been putting in place over a number of years. I think the ultimate objective of this bill is to promote more high-density and mixed-use housing in some communities which may not find that desirable. And what you're really doing with legislation like this is you're taking away the voice of the people at the local level to impact the operations in their community through their city council, their board of county commissioners, special districts, urban planning, or urban renewal areas. I think that's the principal reason to oppose the bill, and I think this amendment, L034, would create a common sense exception to it, that if we've already got urban renewal areas and special districts operating, let's take them out of the bill and make sure that the planning that everybody's put into effect there over the years can keep moving forward. And let's respect our local communities, our citizens, and their ability to influence their local government, to develop the kind of communities that they're interested in and they find livable. So with that, I would urge an aye vote for Amendment L034.
Thank you for the discussion. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the good senator from Highlands Ranch for this amendment. This actually, however, would be inconsistent with the local development practices that are taking place currently across the state. And the bill, particularly following all of this iterative stakeholding with local governments, to hear their feedback about how best to ensure that 1001 is workable and implementable. L34 would undermine that that stakeholder work that has intentionally crafted the language in the manner that you see reflected post the amendments. L34 would undo a lot of that, and development projects in special districts and urban renewal areas they can be approved via administrative review processes today, and there's no reason to exempt them via this amendment. Ask for a no vote.
Is there further discussion on L034? Senator Carson.
I thank the senator from Denver for those comments. I think this is just a good precaution to put in the bill to make sure there's not misunderstanding and confusion out there, that there have already been well-planned projects, urban renewal, special districts. We move them out of the bill. And I think it helps to support the general philosophy that a lot of us have, that, you know, planning decisions, development decisions, housing decisions should really be made at the local community level. That's why we have boards of county commissioners, city councils, the ability for citizens to have input. They don't want the state constantly coming in and telling them what their community should look like, what should be developed there. So I would urge an aye vote for L034 and opposition to the bill as well.
Thank you. Further discussion on L034? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L034. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. No. The noes have it. L034 fails. To the bill. Senator Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that always worries me when we talk about the state usurping local government control when it comes to land use decisions is infrastructure. There are countless implications when you have a change, especially a dramatic change in use of a parcel. One example that we've talked about a lot today is what happens if you have a infill property that was deeded to the school district, and it's surrounded by single-family homes. There is utility capacity in that subdivision that is finite. It just is. That's the way that the subdivision was designed. And so when you talk about water use or electrical use, roads, other infrastructure, it's really important to acknowledge and understand that there's going to be an impact on the surrounding properties.
There is an amendment at the desk. Mr. Schaffler, will you please read L032?
Amendment L32, amend Ringross Bill,
Senator
page 12.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L032 to House Bill 1001.
That's a proper motion. Please tell us about it.
Thank you. I'd love to tell us about it. This is actually a really simple amendment. All it does is it inserts a paragraph that discusses infrastructure impact, and this is what it says. Before allowing construction of a residential development on a qualifying property through an administrative approval process pursuant to subsection 1 of this section, a subject jurisdiction shall ensure that an infrastructure impact assessment is conducted to evaluate the capacity of roads, utilities, and emergency services that serve the qualifying property. This is a really important amendment, members. And I have countless examples. I'll give you one example that happened in the town of Parker. The town of Parker has an urban renewal authority, and they, within that authority boundary, one of the plan areas, built a memory care facility that was quite large and did not really recognize the impact to emergency services of this facility. And they were extraordinary. You can imagine, it's a memory care facility, so you have first responders, your EMTs, they're there multiple times a day. And the thing that was really kind of important about that particular facility and the impact on the fire protection district is that because this is in an urban renewal authority plan area, they were being reimbursed for their services exactly $0, because all of the property tax dollars that they would ordinarily get were being diverted to the urban renewal authority and the developer of the property. That's one example of unintended consequences when we're talking about infrastructure needs. Another example would be there's been several apartment complexes built within this same plan area. Again, no property tax dollars going to the school district for children who are being educated there. And this is it's a little different, but it's really very, very similar, because the impact on infrastructure of these facilities is extraordinary. Whether you're talking about emergency services, educating children, or electricity. We've had lots of conversation about transit-oriented developments in the last several years in this building. And what happens if you don't have the electricity capacity to build a high-rise or a low-rise next to a train line? But by golly, the state's demanding that you do it, or else. This idea of understanding utility and transportation and emergency services capacity is something that we must consider. We must consider it in this building. It's really, really important, because what we are doing here is mandating to local governments that you need to suck it up and do what we say, even if it's not really possible. I hear in my neighborhood a lot, because we have houses still being built. It's like, oh my gosh, the water pressure keeps going down because they keep building more houses. They're not increasing the capacity of the lines. What if you are in a subdivision and they build an apartment building next to it that is on the same system that you are, and that system is not built for that capacity? We hear about it all the time. So the idea of retrofitting some of these empty office buildings here in downtown, and there's a lot of them. We talk about retrofitting it, oh my gosh, it's a great idea. We should reuse those structures. Well, you know what? It's really, really, really hard. And you know why? Because they lack the infrastructure. They're built for office buildings. They don't have the water and sanitation and electrical capacity for 200 apartments or 100 apartments. They just don't. And that's why it's so darn expensive to retrofit those buildings. So before we inflict more pain on local governments, let's at least let them look at this. Let's at least let them understand the impacts to services and to citizens. This is a common sense amendment. It's a common sense amendment that acknowledges that large residential projects, they do significantly impact roads. They do impact water systems. They do impact emergency services. And they do impact utilities. And all of those things require proper planning. So I ask for your aye vote on Amendment 32. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Bright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of Amendment L32 to House Bill 1001. I guess the reason is simple. Anyone who has built a house knows that you pour the foundation before you raise the walls. Today, I'm asking this chamber to apply that same principle to public policy via Amendment L32. House Bill 1001 requires subject jurisdictions to approve qualifying residential developments through an administrative process with no requirement to first assess whether the infrastructure serving that development can actually support it. No road capacity analysis, no water or sewer availability confirmation beyond the basic provider statements on page 16 of the bill, no evaluation of emergency service response times, no stormwater remodeling, just approval based on whether the application meets the objective zoning standards, regardless of what the surrounding infrastructure can bear. I'd like to be clear about the practical consequence of that omission. A 60-unit apartment building generates roughly 400 vehicle trips per day. If it's built on a school district property at the edge of a small town with a 2-lane access road and a volunteer fire department, that building may be perfectly compliant with every standard this bill requires, but it's still a genuine public safety concern from the day that it opens. This bill does allow jurisdictions to apply and enforce infrastructure standards during the administrative process, but that provision only helps communities that already have those standards written into their codes. For the jurisdictions that do not, the smaller communities that are most affected by this bill's 2,000-person threshold, there's nothing to apply. This amendment fills that gap with a straightforward requirements. Before approval, assess whether the roads and utilities and emergency services that can support what is being built. That's not an obstacle to housing. It's the minimum due diligence any responsible government owes to the people who already live in a community before it fundamentally changes it. I would urge my colleagues to support Amendment L32 to House Bill 1001 on this premise.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on L032? Senator Exum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the comments. I would ask for a no vote on Amendment L032. This doesn't, the bill doesn't prevent this from happening, and L32 would mandate this in certain instances and would otherwise not be required today, and would also add to the cost of housing. So we ask for a no vote on L32. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Senator Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm down to support Amendment 32, and I just wanted to bring a couple of things to your attention in regards to this. In the communities that I represent over on the Western Slope, just in a smaller example, when we passed ADUs in the backyards of these residential communities, I don't think anyone was thinking about the size and service of the sewer and water that was developed to maintain those subdivisions, those city blocks in my community. And after a number of these units started being built and paid for, the city ended up having to go down through the middle of the street, putting in new sewer lines and new water lines in order to meet the capacity requirements from these new developments. The same thing is going to be true in regards to older subdivisions or older sections of the community if we bring in multiple units onto that existing service. It's going to be disruptive. It seems to me that we as a community would be money ahead, effort ahead, and the upset in people's lives if we did these assessments to figure out what those capacities are in the streets and in the communities that we're talking about building multiple family developments. Because if you're not thinking about that, it's one of those things that ends up catching up with you, and having to retrofit is something that nobody is addressing those costs. It seems to me that if the developer decided that they wanted to build in these units, build the units in these qualified areas, they would be in a much better position if they were to say to the city government that those lines need to be retrofitted, they need to be prepared for the extra load and the extra capacities that this development is going to require. Because if it's not, then the costs are going to be borne by the community as a whole, rather than the developer at the time they decided they wanted to build multiple units in this community. This is just good governance in trying to figure out what are the capacities of these infrastructures. I'm not talking about the police and the fire and all of those things. I'm talking about every day, the water supply, the sewer capacities. We should know. I think we need to know in order for the people of the community to not end up bearing the costs of the development of multiple units in areas that were not designed for that kind of development. I would ask for a yes vote on Amendment 32. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on L032? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L032. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. The noes have it. L032 fails. To the bill, Senator R. Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is another attempt to have one-size-fits-all policy in the state around housing. All the way from when I was a county commissioner through my time here at the Capitol, I've seen how one-size-fits-all does not work and is always a burden on rural Colorado because these ideas are born up here on the Front Range. And they do, they do not fit out there. And Hartman is not a good place for an apartment building. But with that, Madam Chair.
There is an amendment at the desk. Mr. Shoffley, will you please read L031?
Amendment L31, amend Ringro's Bill, page 12, line 6, strike local government.
Senator Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L031.
That is a proper motion. Please tell us about it.
Yeah, this, as I was speaking a little bit ago about the one-size-fits-all, what this amendment would do would exempt counties of 50,000 or less from this requirement. Again, this is an urban issue that with this amendment would let this bill just address urban counties. Smaller counties operate with limited infrastructure, has been as discussed earlier, fewer planning resources and unique geographic constraints. Our planning and zoning in my home county is one guy. We don't have the resources to handle big apartment building complexes coming in, nor will they fit. So I think this is a great amendment. I'd urge support for L031.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on L031? Senator Carson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I want to support the Amendment L031 by our colleague, our distinguished colleague from Cheyenne Wells. You know, I think this is a good example of how we legislate so much just around the urban issues in the urban areas of this state, and I think our colleague has made an excellent point that this type of stuff really has no relevance out into the rural parts of this state and the smaller communities. I think they can certainly make these kind of housing and planning and development decisions on their own without having to have the state government come in and mandate things and dictate, you know, all of their local government procedures and policies. And so I just wanted to come up and support the amendment. I think it makes a lot of sense, and hope we'll support it.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on L031? Senator Exum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks to the senator from Peltonville for bringing the amendment. But the bill itself provides substantial flexibility and contextual design standards based on similar housing and zoning in each community. Between the bill last year and this year, we've incorporated dozens of ideas to address specific concerns from many communities because we agree we don't want a one-size-fits-all. So I'd ask for a no vote on 31.
Thank you. Senator Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here to support this amendment. The communities that I represent, the majority of them are under 50,000 people. And they're telling me that they really don't know how they're going to be able to accommodate some of the things that are being talked about in the bill in regards to it's awful urban-centric. We're not in that same vein in the communities that we're talking about in my district. And they've asked me to be a no vote. And this is one of the reasons. So please support this Amendment 31.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on L031? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L031. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. No. The noes have it. L031 fails. To the bill. Senator Zamora Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my colleagues have brought up some very important points, and we're going to be seeing some significant issues, and with that is going to be significant costs. And with that, I have another amendment.
There is an amendment at the desk. Mr. Stoffler, can you please read L033?
Amendment L33, amending gross bill page 17, strike lines 7 through 11, and substitute Section 4, Act subject to petition effective date. This act takes effect.
Senator Zamora Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L003 to House Bill 1001.
That's the proper motion. Please tell us about your amendment.
033. 033.
That's the proper motion. L033 has been moved to HB 1001. Please tell us about your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although this bill is trying to reduce costs, housing costs, and once again, as one of my colleagues mentioned, we have high costs because of the increased regulations. We are number 6, the most regulated state in the nation. Looks like we're trying to become number 1. So this is going to have a huge impact, and what this amendment is going to do is it's going to replace the bill's safety clause with a petition clause. This amendment allows Coloradans the opportunity to challenge the bill through the petition process. And this legislation, as I mentioned, significantly alters local land use authority and development standards across the state. Given the bill's broad implication for communities, property owners, and local governments, voters should, they must, weigh in. They must have that opportunity. You know, as far as the costs, this bill is going to create some significant costs. I mean, just look at it's going to create administrative costs for local governments as they implement the new requirements and modify their existing land use codes. Cities and counties will likely need to update zoning ordinances, establish new administrative review procedures, and train planning staff to evaluate projects that qualify under the bill's criteria. Because projects must be processed administratively rather than through discretionary review, planning departments may need to adjust staffing or internal processes to ensure compliance with the state law. And smaller municipalities with limited planning staff could face a disproportionate administrative burden when adapting to the new regulatory framework. Housing development on publicly owned parcels may also increase pressure on local infrastructure systems. New residential developments create additional demand for water, sewer, stormwater systems, roads, transit services, schools, and emergency response capacity. Because the bill restricts local government's ability to control density and other development standards on qualifying properties, some projects may exceed the level of development originally anticipated in local infrastructure plans. This could force municipalities or special districts to accelerate capital improvement projects or expand infrastructure sooner than planned, increasing costs for local governments and taxpayers. There's also indirect impacts on local property tax revenues, and many of the entities eligible to develop housing under the bill, including school districts, transit districts, and certain nonprofits, are tax-exempt organizations. If housing is developed on land owned by these entities, a portion of the property may remain exempt from property taxation, potentially limiting the expected increase in local tax revenues that would normally accompany new residential development. This could shift fiscal pressures onto surrounding taxpayers or reduce anticipated revenue growth for local governments and school districts. In looking at the non-monetary costs, one of the most significant impacts is the reduction of local government authority over land use decisions. Land use planning has historically been a core function of municipal and county governments in Colorado. By requiring local governments to approve certain housing developments administratively and limiting their ability to impose development standards, the bill represents a form of state preemptive over local zoning decisions. Local officials may have fewer tools available to respond to community concerns or to shape developmental patterns consistent with local priorities. This bill may also disrupt long-term community planning efforts. Many municipalities and counties rely on comprehensive plans, neighborhood plans, and growth management policies to guide development in a coordinated way. These plans often balance housing development with infrastructure capacity, environmental considerations, and community input. Because this bill requires administrative approval for qualifying developments, some projects could move forward outside of the typical planning process that allows for public input and coordination with long-term developmental strategies. Neighborhood capability may also become a concern in some communities. Residents living near qualifying properties may experience changes in density, building height, traffic patterns, or parking demand that they feel were not adequately considered through the usual public review process. Since this bill restricts the ability of local governments to impose stricter standards on setbacks, parking, buffering, or landscaping, communities may have fewer options available to mitigate these potential impacts. Another non-monetary concern is the creation of uneven regulatory treatment between different property owners. The bill provides regulatory advantages to developments on land owned by certain nonprofit or public entities, while private landowners remain subject to traditional zoning restrictions and review process. This difference in regulatory treatment could create perception of unfairness in the development process, potentially distort housing development patterns. Also, this could devalue prices on homes, which would negatively impact the owners, their property rights. As also mentioned by my colleagues, this could bring about lawsuits, which would increase monetary costs, which the taxpayer will ultimately eat. So this bill makes significant changes to local land use in their authority by requiring certain housing developments to be approved through administrative processes under certain circumstances. While it's intended to increase housing availability, it does so by limiting the ability of the local communities to make planning decisions about development in their own jurisdictions. Local governments are responsible for balancing housing needs with infrastructure capacity, transportation planning, school capacity, and community input. When the state overrides those decisions, it can create unintended consequences for neighborhoods and local governments that must manage the impacts of new development. Policies that exempt to addressing housing shortages through government mandates often fail to address the underlying causes of housing costs. As I mentioned, regulatory burdens. We're the 6th most regulated state in the nation. In some cases, these mandates can create tension between state authority and local control while shifting infrastructure costs onto local taxpayers. And while increasing housing supply is an important goal, we should pursue solutions that respect the local decision-making and address regulatory barriers rather than imposing top-down requirements. We have to remember, what is the role of government? What is our role? We must protect the rights of we the people to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which includes property rights. And remember, these rights, as my colleague from Brighton mentioned, vested rights. We cannot take those away. That's why we need to have the safety clause. We need to replace such that the public, we the people, can petition and retain its constitutional rights to challenge the law if they choose. I urge an aye vote on on L033.
Is there further discussion on L033? Senator Gonzalez.
L33 replaces the safety clause with a petition clause. I ask for a no vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on L033? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L033. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The noes have it. L033 fails. Seeing no further discussion, is there the L0, the vote, the motion is the passage of 1001, HB 1001. Sorry about that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. L001 is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. It's to rise and report. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report. I couldn't do the last motion.
I'm excited about those.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Kipp.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has had a bill under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
March 11, 2026, Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration the following attached bills being the second reading thereof, makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1001, as amended, passed on second reading in order to revise and place in the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 40, laid over until March 12, 2026, and retaining its place in the calendar.
Senator Kipp.
Thank you. I move the report.
The motion's adoption of the committee of the whole report. There is an amendment at the desk. Mr. Schaffler, please read the title S001 to HB 1001.
Amendment S001.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move S001.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we talked quite a bit about this on the floor earlier today, and this is about the public hearing process, or the lack thereof. Basically, the amendment that we had that I'm asking you to pass is that it would say that local governments would be able to have, not mandate, but be able to have a public hearing. Right now, currently in this bill, it requires an administrative process for what could be something that is very extremely impactful to a neighborhood and could change the character of the neighborhood. And it would go through an administrative process, and the public, the neighbors in that neighborhood, the surrounding property owners, would not have the opportunity to have a public hearing and voice their concerns to their elected officials. This bill cuts out the surrounding neighborhood, those who are impacted most. Eliminating or restricting public hearings is what we have in this legislation, which would be changed with regard to this amendment. Eliminating or restricting public hearings in local government or legislative settings involves balancing efficiency against transparency and democratic participation. While removing them supposedly will streamline the decision-making process, it often results in reduced public trust and potential legal challenges. We don't need to marginalize people's voices that are most impacted. People near projects do have both specific knowledge about the likely effects, and they certainly know what they believe to be the impacts of their new development and strong beliefs about how their neighborhood should look and feel. The simplest definition of democracy is government by the people, where the power rests with the citizens who exercise it either directly in a public hearing or indirectly through their elected representatives, ensuring they have a voice in their own governance. And in this case, ensuring they have a voice in what their neighborhood looks like, what their community looks like. We should have a system where citizens have these fundamental rights, and we do. Equality, and they get to participate in the decision-making process. By contrast, this bill is about ruling that out. It would be about an administrative approval process where they get to send in their comments, but it doesn't have any impact. Telling the public and the neighbors that are around this neighborhood or in this area, and the people who are the most impacted, telling your constituents they don't count is never a good idea. It's just wrong. Wouldn't it be better to make decisions in the light? To make decisions not behind closed doors, but make decisions that our constituents, that the neighborhood who's being impacted, that the people who are being impacted the most have the opportunity to have a transparent, accountable government. So I ask for an aye vote on S001. Let's put the public back into the public hearing process. Let's not silence their vote. Let's silence their voice. Let's make sure that their voice counts. I ask for an aye vote on S001.
Senator Kirkmeyer, if you wouldn't mind, we have, no, you're good. We have a member that I did not have a chance to excuse. We need to excuse them for this vote. Could you please withdraw your motion, and then we'll have to just, you don't have to go you don't have to give all those comments again. But if you would please withdraw your motion for the adoption of S001, I'd appreciate that. Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I withdraw my motion of S001.
Very good. And then also Senator Kipp, would she have to withdraw her motion because we're in a motion for the committee of the whole report adoption? Senator Kipp, come on down. Who's paying attention to the rules? All right, Senator Kipp, please withdraw your motion for the committee of the whole report.
I withdraw the motion for the committee of the whole report to be adopted.
Very good. That motion has also been withdrawn. Now, Mr. Schaffler, please excuse Senator Pelton B. No. I mean, I wish it was a vote, but. All right, anybody else want to be excused? Very good. All right. Now, please move for the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
The motion is adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? I'm just joking. Are there any amendments? There is an amendment at the desk. Mr. Schaffler, please read S001 to HB 1001.
Amendment S001.
Senator Kirkmeyer, please raise your hand so I can interrupt Mr. Schaffler. Thank you. Please move the amendment.
I must be short because I did have my hand up.
No, you're good.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move S001.
All right, to the amendment, or you could just ask for an aye vote for the amendment. Senator Kirkmeyer.
I am going to ask for an aye vote, but I'm just going to say it one more time. But I'll be a little bit more brief. But this is important because eliminating a public hearing, it's a loss of transparency and trust. It diminishes public oversight. It can lead to the perception of closed-doors deals and decrease trust in government. It reduces our democratic accountability. I've heard it down here several times about democracy. A public hearing is the opportunity for the people who are most impacted to have their voice heard. We're missing an opportunity. When we cut the public out of a public hearing, what should be a public hearing process, we are missing an opportunity to guarantee trust, accountability, and transparency, and democracy. I would ask for an aye vote on S001. Let's put the public back into this process. Let's let them have their voice. They deserve it. Thank you.
Very good. Further discussion on S001. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the conversation that we had about this in the second reading when we were debating the policy itself. I will again reiterate my request for a no vote because the law already allows for public input into the objective standards that govern the administrative review process in housing development. And what is not allowed is for arbitrary or inconsistent standards that treat each project differently and unpredictably. And we did address this, as the good senator from Broomfield spoke to and alluded to it during the original committee process, and for that reason, I urge a no vote.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill, should it become law, would not allow for a public hearing process. In the definition under administrative process, under the definition on page 3 of the bill, administrative approval process, there's a 2AI that talks about what an administrative approval process is. In the current law, there is a II that says for an administrative approval process, it does not require and cannot be elevated to require a public hearing, a recommendation, or a decision by an elected or appointed body or a hearing officer. The law is clear, so this bill which pushes forward an administrative approval process, which is a mandate. It shall, these land use developments shall go through an administrative approval process, not a process in front of an elected body or even an appointed body. You know, planning commission, town board, city council, board of county commissioners. It would just go through an approval process, and it does not require a public hearing, and you can't even elevate it. The board couldn't say, gosh, there's a lot going on with that, and we want to have a public hearing on it, because, I don't know, we got a gazillion emails or a gazillion comments. They could not elevate it to a public hearing process. That is what's in current law. Further, this bill does not say that there can be a public hearing process. It's the exact opposite. This bill says that, first of all, that it is a requirement to go through an administrative process in front of staff, not in front of a local government. This bill had an amendment put on it, which was a good try. Enacting or applying a local law that requires notifying the public. Notifying the public is not the same as holding a public hearing. It is only notifying the public about a development application. I got news for you. They have to do that anyways. So just putting it again in duplication in the law doesn't make it a public hearing. They just have to notify the public regarding a development hearing or development application. And then, yeah, they say, yeah, you can give us comments. To the administrative staff. That is not a public hearing. They do not have the opportunity to speak to their elected officials. The fact that we're doing an administrative process that doesn't take into consideration subjective matters, which are compatibility with the comprehensive plan, which are compatibility with the existing surrounding neighborhood, and that we don't give that existing surrounding neighborhood the opportunity to voice any of their issues that they may have, such as you are changing the definition, you are changing what my neighborhood looks like dramatically, and I will be impacted by increased traffic. I will be impacted by issues with maybe with my water or my sanitation district. I may be impacted by more crime. Who knows? They have all sorts of things that they want to bring up. Silencing the voice of the people who are most impacted and not giving them the opportunity of transparency, holding their elected officials accountable, and democracy, their voice, is wrong. This amendment, S001, makes sure that we put the public back into what is an extremely public process. So I ask for an aye vote on S001.
Further discussion on S001? Seeing none. The motion is the adoption of S001 and House Bill 1001. Are there any no votes? Senators Gonzalez, Danielson, Marchman, Wallace, Cutter, Benavidez, Kip, Amabile, Judah, Doherty, Mr. Majority Leader, Snyder, Roberts, Exum, Mullica, Henriksen, Bridges, Weissman, Colker, Lindstedt, Sullivan, Ball. Please add the president. With a vote of 11 ayes, 23 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, S001, the House Bill 1001 is lost. Seeing no further, there are. There's a member of the desk. Mr. Schaffler, please read S002, the House Bill 1001.
Amendment S002, Senator Pelton.
Senator Pelton R.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Amendment S002.
To the amendment.
Thank you. I tried to run this amendment while we were in discussion on the bill to exempt counties 50,000 or less from this bill. Again, one-size-fits-all policy pushed down from the city onto our country folks that does not fit. I'm down here constantly trying to protect rural Colorado from this building in the Front Range, and here's another attempt at me trying to protect them. So please, I ask for your yes vote on 002.
Further discussion on 002. Senadora.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm bummed. I thought this was going to be the Republican rent control amendment. Still ask for a no vote.
Further discussion. Seeing none. The motion is the adoption of S002 to House Bill 1001. Are there any no votes? Senators Gonzalez, Doherty, Cutter, Danielson, Marchman, Wallace, Benavidez, Judah, Kip, Mobile, Exum, Henriksen, Weissman, Ball, Sullivan, Lindstedt, Colker, Colker again. Oh, that's Snyder. Bridges, Mullica. Please add the president. With a vote of 13 ayes, 21 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, S002 to House Bill 1001 is lost. That's it. The motion is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? What? Mr. Minority Leader. Kirkmeyer, Zamora Wilson, Rich, Baisley, Liston, Pelton R., Catlin, Carson, Bright. With a vote of 24 ayes, 10 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. House Bill 1001 is amended, passed second reading, order revised, placed on account of third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 40 laid over until 3/12/2026, retaining its place on the calendar. Consideration of resolutions. Mr. Schaffler, please read the title of HJR 1020.
House Joint Resolution 1020 by Representatives Rickson, Espinosa, and Senator Marchman and Wallace concerning the designation of March 8, 2026 as International Women's Day in Colorado, and in connection therewith acknowledging the countless contributions that women have made in history and to contemporary society.
Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Joint Resolution 1020 lay over until Friday the 13th, March 2026.
The motion is lay over HJR 1020 to Friday, March 13, 2026. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. HJR 1020 will lay over until Friday, March 13, 2026. Consideration of House amendments to Senate bills. Mr. Schaffler, please read the title of Senate Bill 1.
Senate Bill 1 by Senators Roberts and Bridges and Representative Basnicker and Richardson concerning housing and in connection therewith authorizing a board of county commissioners to appropriate money to support specified types of housing and making the middle income housing tax credit available to transferees who do not own an interest in a qualified development.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 1.
Senator Roberts, please tell us why we're giving in to the lower chamber.
I know. The House made one amendment on second reading. It was a technical fix that the drafter alerted us to that needed to be made with some numbering issues. It does not change the substance of the bill at all.
Very good. Any further discussion? Seeing none. The motion is that the Senate concur with the House amendments to Senate Bill 1. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, that motion is adopted. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 1 and ask for an aye vote.
The motion is the repassage of Senate Bill 1. Are there any no votes? What? Senators Frizzell. Senate Bill 1. No votes on repassage of Senate Bill 1. All right. Rich, Baisley, Liston, Zamora Wilson, Pelton R. Carson, Carson. please mark Senator Frizzell as a yes on the repassage of Senate Bill 1. Further no votes. Seeing none, with a vote of 28 ayes, 6 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 001 is repassed. Co-sponsors. For repassage, you are already on there. Senate Bill 1. All right. Consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar. Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over the governor's appointment consent calendar until Thursday, March 12th, 2026.
The motion is to lay over governor's appointments consent calendar Thursday, March 12th, 2026. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. What? The ayes have it. Governor's appointments consent calendar will lay over until Thursday, March 12th, 2026. Message from the House.
The House has adopted and returns herewith Senate Joint Resolution 1. The House has passed on third reading and transmitted to the Reviser of Statutes, House Bill 1191. House has passed on third reading and transmitted to the Reviser of Statutes, House Bill 1089, House Bill 1095, House Bill 1258, and House Bill 1090, amended as printed in House Journal March 10, 2026. House has passed on third reading and returns herewith Senate Bill 34 and Senate Bill 64. House has passed on third reading and transmitted to the Reviser of Statutes, Senate Bill 13, amended as printed in House Journal March 10, 2026, and amended on third reading as printed in House Journal March 11, 2026.
Message from the Reviser.
We herewith transmit without comment House Bill 1191 without comment as amended, House Bill 1089, 1090, 1095, and 1258 without comment as amended, Senate Bill 13.
Introduction of resolutions. Mr. Schaffner, please read the title of SJR 017.
Senate Joint Resolution 017 by Senators Frizzell and Weissman and Representatives Brooks and Wilford concerning the reappointment of Carrie L. Hunter to the position of State Auditor.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Joint Resolution 17 lay over until Monday, March 16th, 2026.
The motion is lay over SJR 017 to Monday, March 16, 2026. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. SJR 017 lay over until Monday, March 16, 2026. Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 137 by Senators Coleman and Simpson and Representatives McCluskey and Caldwell concerning measures to reduce administrative burdens and in connection therewith making changes to the mandatory review of department rules by each principal department and clarifying the Attorney General's scope of authority related to litigation discovery.
Finance.
Senate Bill 138 by Senators Doherty and Mullica and Representative Stewart Kay concerning measures to reduce the administrative burden on the healthcare system.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 1081 by Representatives Camacho and Duran and Senator Roberts concerning measures to optimize Colorado's electric transmission system.
Transportation and Energy.
House Bill 1084 by Representative Espinosa and Camacho and Senators Weissman and Lindstedt concerning voter transparency requirements to expand information about the funding of initiated statewide ballot measures and in connection therewith requiring the ballot title and abstract of the fiscal impact statement for certain initiated statewide ballot measures to identify the main areas of state expenditures that would be affected by the measure.
That's how it's done. State Veteran Military Affairs.
House Bill 1120 by Representatives Martinez and Velasco and Senators Simpson and Kipp concerning the implementation of the recommendations of the Mobile Home Taxation Task Force and in connection therewith modifying the process for the collection of delinquent property taxes to align with real property tax lien sale and public auction procedures, extending the redemption period for mobile home owners and clarifying that a mobile home owner under legal disability is entitled to an extended redemption period of up to 9 years.
Finance.
House Bill 1228 by Representative Stewart R. and Foray and Senator Danielson concerning measures to increase access to licensure as a marriage and family therapist.
Business, Labor, and Technology. Signing of bills.
The President has signed House Bill 1027, 1152, 1153, 1154, 1156, 1157, 1158, 1159, 1160, 1161, 1162, 1163, 1164, 1165, 1166, and 1167, 1168, and 1169.
That's a lot of bills to sign. Announcements. Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, Senate Health and Human Services Committee will be meeting 15 minutes upon adjournment in the old Supreme Court to hear Medical Services Board confirmation and House Bill 1042, dry needling by occupational therapists.
Very good, very good. Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I just wanted to make a quick announcement about the Senate Business, Labor, and Technology Committee on Thursday. On adjournment, we'll be hearing Senate Bill 134, and as has been communicated to the proponents and opponents of the measure, the testimony will be limited to 4 panels per side, 2 minutes per witness, and 5 minutes for questions per panel. Thanks, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Senator Kolker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Education Committee will be hearing today at 1:30 in SCR 357 we have two bills, Senate Bill 125 and Senate Bill 126.
Very good. Senator Cutter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two announcements. So first, I wanted to just take a moment, it's sort of after the fact since we had a long morning, but recognize that we have had folks here from the Colorado Association of Family and Children's Agencies and Raise the Future have been in the building today. Hope you got a chance to talk to some of them. CAFCA is an alliance of agencies committed to providing quality care, leadership and accountability and services to children, youth, and families in Colorado. And Raise the Future designs and implements evidence-based wraparound services that reduce the amount of time youth in foster care live without permanent family. So hopefully you have got a chance to speak with them or will do so yet today. These welfare advocates will be looking for you, so welcome to them. And also, I'm announcing Senate Transportation and Energy Committee will meet at either 1:30 p.m. or 15 minutes upon adjournment of the adjournment committees in Senate Committee Room 352. Yeah, we'll be hearing Orphan Wells Mitigation Enterprise Board confirmations, members of Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission, and Community Access Enterprise appointees, and we'll hear Senate Bill 002.
Very good. Senator Mabile.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Joint Budget Committee will be meeting yet again at 1:30 today for sure, and we'll be doing figure setting for higher ed.
Very good. Senator Marchman.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow, the Joint Technology Committee will meet at 8 a.m. in Senate Room 352. We're going to discuss and take action on the Judicial Department requests. We're going to discuss the OIT operating requests, R1 and R7, and then other committee discussion.
Very good. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I have an announcement about an event happening tomorrow morning. I hope you can join Mothers Against Drunk Driving in AAA Colorado for coffee and donuts in the basement tomorrow, March 12th, starting at 8 a.m. Come hear from constituents and volunteers about the work they're doing to make our roads safer. Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Wiseman.
Thank you. Members, Judiciary meets this afternoon, 1:30, or as soon as we can, once health is done in the same room, to hear Senate Bill 97. See you in the old Supreme Court room.
Very good. Further announcement. There is another announcement from the great senator from Mullicaville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, Capital Development Committee will be meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 in room 357 for consideration of House Bill 1301.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate adjourn until 9 a.m. Thursday, March the 12th.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All right, the ayes have it. The Senate will adjourn until 9 a.m. on Thursday, March 12th, 2026.